What's up, everybody? It's your boy 10-Day Tony. As you can see, we're here in a new setup. Why? Where are we? We're in an RV. We just retrofitted this RV. We're doing Tony's NFL road trip. We're going to go to different cities and talk to very smart football people from those cities or that cover those teams. We're going to be leading you up to football with some great information on fantasy, on the teams overall. Think of it as like a team preview / fantasy preview that you can go to with some of the best people and the sharpest minds in football. Football analysis does not get better than Mina Kimes. And especially when she's talking about her own team, the Seattle Seahawks, which I preview with her. We talk Geno Smith, we talk Jackson Smith and Jigba, we talk DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the defense, the offense, Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson. We get into a whole bunch of stuff with one of the smartest football minds that we have in America, Mina Kimes. We're here in Seattle, Lumen Field. Look at this, the home of one Mina Kimes. You actually live here at Lumen Field, or?
Yeah, I do. I you can't see my house. It's
up here, right? Somewhere up there?
Somewhere up there, yeah.
Okay, so Mina, the Seattle Seahawks, a team that everybody kind of thought, hey, look, no Russ. We're going to trot out Geno Smith. And the team surprisingly was good.
Yeah, Geno.
Like, why?
Geno, honestly, it really starts there, which was, he started a few games when Russell Wilson was hurt in 2021, and it was kind of mixed. He had a couple good games, but he really didn't play much football for a really long time. And I think it's what made it so surprising, but also it wasn't like a player who was bad and then suddenly got good. It was a guy who just didn't play. He wasn't a starter. So it was a very unusual career trajectory. And, I think last year he certainly surpassed my expectations based on what I saw earlier in his career. In a lot of ways, he threw probably the most beautiful deep ball in the NFL last season. He was accurate. He was playmaking. Performance dipped a little bit at the end of the season, but by and large, he played like a top quarterback in the NFL, and the offense was really good because of it.
It's crazy, too. Like, looking at some of the stuff, they scored 30 touchdowns on plays longer than 10 yards.
Yeah.
No other team had more than 27. Like, that's such a stark departure from what they were, right?
Well, Russell Wilson was a very good thrower of the deep ball, but he was a little bit inconsistent his last 2 years in Seattle. And, Geno had the benefit of playing with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, one of the better 1-2 punches, a receiver in the NFL, both guys who can win deep. And he was really aggressive throwing downfield, tight window throw rate really high. Just about every advanced metric, he was the best deep ball thrower in the NFL, to be honest. So it was fun to watch. They were very explosive. They actually weren't that great running the ball last year, which was kind of held them back a bit.
And what was weird, too, is you would see Kenneth Walker like take off for these like 60-yard runs. And you're like, oh, wow, this guy's incredible. And you look and he's like, he kind of wasn't that great, which is why they went out and spent a second-round pick on a running back.
Yeah, it was very boomer bust, to your point. And the guy they drafted from LA, Zach Charbonnet, is a little bit more, I think, consistent, kind of grind them out. So I think it'll be a good pairing. I think this offense is going to be really, really good. I have some concerns about the defense, but I think the offense is going to be awesome.
Add Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was awesome. And now you're looking at the Seahawks having like maybe the best trio of wide receivers. Like if we can project out Jackson into what we think he could be, and you got DK, you got Tyler Lockett, and you got Jigba on the outside, it's like, wait a second, like this is a legitimate team.
I think that they're probably the second best 1-2-3 at receiver. Now, I think there's better 1-2s, like in Philly, for example. There's a few. But behind Cincinnati with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, I would put Seattle, and obviously that involves some projection with Smith and Jigba. But he was so polished in college and such a good fit with the two receivers in Seattle because of his ability to work the slot, get yards after the catch. Just a real problem for defenses.
And you look across this division, you've got two teams that are kind of just in nowhere in a wasteland. And then you got the 49ers, who it feels like you guys have always been chasing. How do you think that comp, obviously the added offensive firepower, knowing that the defense is maybe lacking a little bit on the backside, but how do you think this division is going to play out with the 49ers kind of retooling and looking good again, another year of them looking good again?
I got the Niners winning the division. A fan, but a realist. That roster is just so stacked on both sides of the ball. And then I think Seattle's, they're a wild card team for sure. And then they're a wild card team in part because the Cardinals and the Rams the Cardinals are straight up not trying to win this year.
Terrible.
And then the Rams are kind of a weird team because I think the offense could be okay if Stafford, Kupp are healthy and the line plays a little bit better. But defensively, it is a wild roster. I used to work the Rams preseason. I took this summer off, but it's guys who I remember playing in the preseason.
That's never good.
It's very rookie heavy. A lot of guys, and then get some guys on 1-year deals. So I think because of the competition, both Seattle and San Francisco, that's 4 games each against 2 really, really not great rosters.
Yeah, Arizona. I was looking across. I'm like, who's playing right now? And Marlon Mack just got hurt with another Achilles tear too a couple days ago. It's like, man, I don't know. That's a bad team. Pete Carroll had obviously some interesting comments at the beginning of last year. Some people wanted to draw that to being shade for Russell Wilson. I feel like that's in the back burner now. How do you think Pete's going to do this season?
I think really good. I mean, this whole thing, the last year, I think it was a lot of it because of Geno Smith, but it was really a referendum on Pete Carroll in a good way, right? Because, there were stories about how Russ wanted him out and wanted Sean Payton. And then, there were a lot of times during the Russell Wilson era when fans and analysts, myself included, were frustrated with Pete's adherence to running the ball. The fact that they wanted to move on from him was frustrating. But frankly, he was right about moving on, clearly, right? So I think, the challenge for him is really not offensive, it's defense. This was not a good defense last year, particularly against the run. They added a few players, some really good additions, I think. So to me, that's going to be really incumbent upon Pete this year. He's so famous for those defenses from 2012 or really 2010 through 2013-ish, 14. But they haven't been good for a while. So they need to be a lot better if they actually want to compete.
Funny how in the power dynamic of quarterback and head coach, usually the quarterback wins in a lot of those cases. And this one was like, nah, Russell, see you later. And then he ended up getting Sean Payton anyway. But last year was kind of a disaster. Again, Hackett will kind of throw that under the rug, but it's weird how that usually never happens. And it ended up happening where Pete Carroll won. And then on top of that had the last laugh because Russell and Denver were terrible and Geno Smith's comeback player of the year. The story wrote itself.
I think Pete Carroll and John Schneider, the GM, being aligned is a big part of why they ultimately won that power struggle. There was also a change in ownership. There were some things happening on the back end, but you're right. It's very, at least it used to be really unusual. It's pretty unusual for teams to part ways with a franchise quarterback and, Russell Wilson, who really changed the team forever. And obviously they won that Super Bowl. So it was very unusual for the coach to win. And then for him to come out that first game with Geno and actually win that one as well. I mean, the Schadenfreude in Seattle was through the roof.
We wrote him off. He didn't write back. Last question. Who's the one player, offensive or defensive on this roster that you're looking forward to this year and being like, okay, I'm excited to see this guy play?
I really like the guy they took 5th overall, Devin Witherspoon, which was a bit surprising because I think a lot of people, honestly, myself included, until that last day, thought they would take a pass rusher or maybe a defensive tackle, Jalen Carter. I thought Witherspoon was the best corner in the draft. He's such a fun player to watch, and you guys will get to see this because he's really not that big, maybe just a touch under 6 feet or about 6 feet, but he's so physical. He laid some of the hardest hits I have seen from a cornerback of the last few years. He plays a lot bigger in his size. He plays inside, outside, man, zone. He can really do it all. I think they're going to use him pretty creatively. And, Pete Carroll has this great history of coaching up DBs. Last year, Tariq Woolen, it was a later round draft pick, ended up being awesome for them. So, I don't believe, now that I think about it, in his time in Seattle, they've ever drafted somebody a cornerback that high. So the combination of his pedigree, what we saw in college, Pete Carroll coaching him, I think he could be a really, really, really fun player this year.
Mina, thank you so much. Live from Lumen Field, her home. I don't see Lenny anywhere, but I'm sure he's probably hanging out somewhere. Check out all of her stuff, the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, ESPN, NFL Live, all that good stuff. She's amazing there. Mina, thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you. Bye.
We were lucky enough here on Tony's NFL Road Trip to do not one, but two cities with the great Charles McDonald. Chuck, my boy from Yahoo Sports, one of the best football writers in America right now. We're doing Kansas City with him, and we're doing his hometown of Atlanta, his favorite team. We get into Patrick Mahomes, we get into Desmond Ridder, Bijan Robinson, a whole bunch of stuff. Enjoy Kansas City, Atlanta with the boy, Charles McDonald. Road trip gets down to the dirty South. We got the one and only Charles McDonald from Yahoo Sports, probably the best writer in the NFL right now. I mean, I don't see who. Yeah, come on, man. I got to give you props. I got to give you your flowers, bro. Like, there's nobody doing it better than you right now.
I appreciate that. Oh,
man. It's all love. You know, it's family. I had to get you in and talk about your Atlanta Falcons. And I wish I had come under better circumstances, because the Falcons last year, 15 of 17 games were one-score games. Marcus Mariota project didn't work. Desmond Ridder, the jury's still out.
We'll see with Desmond. I mean, did you freeze?
No. I'm no. It's not like you were gonna drop something. So I was like, hold on.
No. Wait for a second, because like you just weren't moving. So I was like, wait, did I lose connection for a second? But no. Desmond's like, we'll see. I'm baffled that people are like this fired up over a third-round quarterback, though.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's partly impact because it's tied together with the idea that they didn't trade up for Bryce, CJ, Anthony Richardson when they were like legitimately in striking range to do so. I mean, the Panthers, they moved from 9-1 to make that happen, and the Falcons at the 8th pick. So I guess, you know, part of it is like you chose this to stick with this third-round quarterback, but whatever. Like, if he stinks, then they'll move on
next year,
and if he doesn't, then you found something. But I think what's kind of exciting about where they've put themselves with Desmond is all he has to do is just be like competent. Yeah. If everyone stays healthy, you know, because you're going to have the support in the backfield from Bijan and Tyler Algier. Like Tyler Algier, over the last back half of the season, he was one of the better running backs in the league.
Yeah.
And we already know how good Bijan is. Kyle Pitts will be back. Drake London will be in his second year. So like there's stuff to work with. And honestly, like the offensive line, I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of people talk about it, but they were kind of one piece away from having like a legitimately damn good offensive line last year, because Chris Lindstrom, one of the best guards in the league, Caleb McGarry, they had to bring him back because he played well enough last year. Jake Matthews, even as he enters like year 13 or something like that, maybe year 10.
Still solid.
He's still solid too. So like really what they need to do is shore up that left guard spot, and they drafted Matthew Bergeron. So if he can kind of hit the ground running, you're looking at a team that's got playmakers in the offensive line, and Arthur Smith, who I think is still one of the better play callers in the league. So to me, it's exciting that they're in a situation where Desmond might not have to do too much in order for them to score again. Because, you know, if you look at like some of the advanced numbers last year, they were 5th in success rate, as crappy as everything was for them. They finished 12th in DVOA on offense. So, you know, I think when you see people talk about, oh, this could be one of the best offenses in the league, they were almost there last year with all of the crap that they had going on. I don't expect it to be a 30-point a game or something like that, but I do expect this team to be able to move the ball pretty easily with the players they've acquired.
I mean, they were in 15 of 17 games were one-score games. Like
right.
Nobody else was close to that in the league. Let me read you a couple numbers. Arthur Smith's offense, 1st in rushing yards, 1st in yards per carry, 1st in rushing first downs, 1st in EPA per rush, 3rd in success rate per rush. Like the running game works. Like I don't know what Arthur Smith can do, because he did it in Tennessee and now he's doing it in Atlanta. But like the running games, the scheme works. He just has to get somebody in there that can command the offense, control the offense, like he had at least, you know, a little Tannehill or whatever, just to make sure the offense is moving. But Tyler Algier broke the rookie running record for Atlanta. Now enter Bijan Robinson. How'd you feel about that pick?
Okay. See, like the numbers you just read off about the running game last year, to me, as you know, if I were to construct a roster, that would be like the prime reason why you don't need to go draft Bijan number 8 overall. Right. Because you were doing with guys like Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson at this point in his career. Caleb Huntley, who just got cut, but he was a part of their success last year. To me, if I was putting together a team, I was like, okay, well, I have this guy who can figure out a run game with whoever's out back there. Don't really need to pick up Bijan. But the football fan in me, that's exciting,
Of course.
to like just to pair those guys together. I mean, we've all seen how good Bijan was at Texas, and to me, he's one of the rare guys. Like, yeah, the process kind of stunk to me, but the player is so good that I kind of got over it pretty fast. I mean, you added Bijan Robinson to your football team. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at the end of the day. It's just, can Desmond Ridder be like Jim Harbaugh era 49ers, like where he's coming in, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I'm not asking for anything crazy. They're still going to run the ball.
Just keep the ship afloat. That's all you got to do.
Keep the ship afloat. And I think with Arthur, at times, there's times where he gets too bogged down in, there's a clip last year. I don't remember exactly which game it was, where he's like, we're going to run the piss out of the ball. And they run the ball 14 times in a row and they score a touchdown. And that's great because he has that innate knowledge in his head. But we also know that throwing the ball is a little bit more conducive to scoring points. So, the game that comes back to my mind is, I mean, I don't think they're going to win this game regardless because the defense had no chance. But they went to Cincinnati last year and they got absolutely run out the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I want to say Joe Burrow threw 4 or 5 touchdowns in the first half. But you're still trying to just get it back 2-3 yards at a time. I would hope Arthur has kind of learned a little bit from those circumstances. And look, this year, as much as it is about trying to win the NFC South and get to the playoffs, it is also about trying to evaluate Desmond Ridder at the same time. So you're gonna have to let him fling it, let him make some mistakes, and see how he develops by the end of the year.
Talking about his weapons, Drake London, Mac Hollins, who's looking like an animal outside. Like, I've never seen somebody that big at a camp. Maybe it's just recency bias, but you got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London, you got Mac Hollins on the outside, who's good at a number 2. Are you excited about those weapons, or do you feel like they need to take another step?
I'm excited within reason. I'm really excited for Drake because I kind of think he can be a wide receiver 1 that kind of leads the fray. But I don't know. With Mac, we'll see. He looks like David. You remember David Boston, that little Cardinals receiver?
Yeah, he looks huge, just
biceps as big as his shoulder pads. Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't do shit.
Yeah. So hopefully that doesn't happen with Mac Hollins. But I feel like the wide receiver spot's okay. I think they've kind of put themselves in a spot where, in order for this to not be a problem for them, they probably need Drake London to take a huge step, which he's capable of doing. I see people talk, I saw something the other day about people laughing about the Falcons taking London over Olave and Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like all 3 of those guys are really damn good. And if Drake London was in an offense that threw the ball as much as those guys, maybe he would have had over 1,000 yards, but he was still getting the ball in the end zone. And I think what's really exciting, if you're a fan, is the last 4 games that he played with Desmond Ridder. The extrapolation pace stats are bullshit, but he would have had about a 1,400 yard rookie season just based on, those 4 games that they played together. So I'm excited for it. Defense, don't ask me about the defense.
No, I wasn't even going to. I was gonna keep on with Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
is
Kyle
this
Pitts
year,
dude. He's that guy. I don't know what people. This is the part that legitimately makes me angry with Kyle Pitts stuff. People talk about him like he's been in the league for like 5 years. That was last year was year 2 for him.
Yeah.
Year 1, he got over 1,000 yards. So I haven't really seen anything that would make me think, oh, he can't be the guy that we all thought he was going to be, because in year 1, he was like on the doorstep of being that guy. And then last year,
it's quarterback play.
It was quarterback play, and then he got hurt, and then it was over for him last year. So I'm still super bullish on him. Dude, he's only going to be 23 years old this season.
I know. And he's just a freak athlete too. Like the way that you can line him up anywhere on the field. I think a lot of the problems too were they were making him run like super long routes, right? And when you have a quarterback that has 2 seconds to throw and he's trying to figure out, all right, what am I doing? Kyle Pitts is 17 yards down the field. He's not going to throw him on a seam route with the safety over the top. So, like, I think a lot of it, too, is play calling and getting him into winnable spots.
Yeah, and I think what's also special about Kyle Pitts is, dude, like, he's a really good ball carrier. Like, when he has the ball in his hands. I remember last year when they went out to Seattle, that was one of the games where Arthur was like, all right, we're going to feed him and get him really involved in the first half. They're throwing screens to him. And the way that he's able to kind of move with the ball in his hands, it's really unusual for a guy who's, 6'6", pushing 250. So, I think when you talk about the receivers, like, you kind of got to throw Kyle Pitts in there to a degree, because he's going to be kind of splitting his time 50-50, I think, between inline and then, the slot and outside stuff. So, like, it's good weapons to have, So if Desmond can just keep the ship afloat, I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm not even asking for a division win. I just want touchdowns. I just want to see some touchdowns together. That's all I'm asking for.
He's Charles McDonald. Check out his stuff on Yahoo. The Exemplist coming back, possibly
very soon.
Very soon. Keep locked on that, and maybe we'll see you later on down the road on this road trip. I think you're a fan of another team that we want to talk to you about.
Oh, okay. We'll see.
Tony's NFL road trip hits Hollywood. We talked to the only man that we can talk to in Hollywood, Equano Primo Mio, Jorge Sedano, who covers the Rams, who covers the Chargers, who covers the Lakers. He does everything ESPN LA and college football, NBA. He's doing everything. But he's been at Rams camp. He's been talking to people from the Chargers, and we're going to preview the Chargers and the Rams next with Jorge Sedano. All right, Tony's NFL road trip hits the West Coast, and I had to talk to El Primo Mio. It feels like the only Cuban in LA who knows all the good Cuban spots to head to. Jorge Sedano, ESPN LA. You can find him on NBA stuff. You can find him in college football everywhere. George, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? Good to see you.
Are we going to get some Cuban food out there when I go to LA again, or what?
I told you. You tell me. Like, I took you to some fancy Italian place last time, but if you want, but the problem is, to get good Cuban food, we're gonna have to drive. And as you learned, it's not easy to get around this place. So
no, you're like, oh yeah, just meet us in Manhattan Beach. It's like, oh, perfect. It's a couple miles away. 3 hours later, we show up.
That's LA, bro. You never know what you're gonna get. That's the reality of it.
So let's start with the Rams. Feels like a bit of a bleak season for the once Super Bowl champs. It feels like they kind of sold their soul to try and get that Super Bowl. They made it happen, and now the roster looks kind of sad. Like, Matthew Stafford's aging very quickly. Cooper Kupp hurt now during training camp. What's your outlook for the Rams this season?
I'm actually more positive on them than most people. I think Vegas has them at 6.5. I think that's an over. Sean McVay is still a really good coach. Stafford is healthy right now. Kupp is a hamstring thing. I think that's more of a precautionary thing. I'm not super worried about it. It's not like he's going to play in the games anyway in the preseason. So that doesn't matter to me. To me, the key is this for them offensively is the offensive line. They went through 12 different starting lineups last year on the offensive line, which was the most by a long shot in the NFL. And when you got a guy like Matthew Stafford back there, who's had his own bout with injuries and is not like the most mobile guy in the world, I think that becomes a huge problem. So they drafted a kid, Steve Avila, out of TCU, and they love him at the guard position. They're going to test out a young guy at left tackle right now during camp. He's held up pretty well because they'd like to keep Havenstein on the right side if they could. So to me, the offensive line is key because Kupp is going to get his for sure. I think in the passing game, he's clearly the number one option. And, he's a top, 10 option in fantasy, period. Easily. And then Tyler Higbee, I think, will also be a safety blanket for Matthew Stafford. But I do think, at least based on what I've seen in camp, I think Van Jefferson is back and healthy, and I think he's going to play a big role. Here's a sleeper pick for you on fantasy.
We love that.
Puka Nacua. They drafted him out of BYU. A lot of the people I've talked to at camp tell me that he has a little bit, and this is going to sound crazy because you see the guy now, but he has a little bit of a Cooper Kupp feel to him. Okay. Remember Cooper Kupp when he was drafted, 5th round pick, right? Eastern Washington. Nobody knew who he was. People didn't think he would even make the team. This kid has a little bit of that. I'm not saying he's going to be Cooper Kupp in year 1 or even year 2 or even in his career, but they like him a lot like they liked Kupp as a lower draft pick. So he could be a guy in there. They're playing Tutu Atwell a ton in preseason, and he's a guy that has got a lot of speed. Miami kid, right? Went to Louisville. Injuries have been a big issue with him, But Kupp is number one, no question. If you're looking at the Rams fantasy, he's still going to get fed the ball a ton. I think Stafford, if I had to think of Stafford and where I would place him fantasy-wise, it's probably like a top 20 quarterback. In that 15 to 20 range is where I would safely put him. Kupp is easily a top 3 wide receiver. Then Higbee's probably a top 15 tight end. Cam Akers to me a top 20 running back, probably closest to 20. And then all those other guys I mentioned are kind of more late flyers, right? Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, Puka Nacua. Those are the type of guys you're looking at. I know the kid they took from Notre Dame 2 years ago, Kyron Williams, a guy at running back, maybe like a late flyer or a free agent target on him. But yeah, that's kind of the outlook on the Rams offensively. But if their offensive line holds, Tony, I think they can be an 8-win team and maybe even a 9-win team. And in the NFC where it stinks, if we're being real, I think a 9-win team can make the playoffs.
They're at least not the worst team in their division, right? We know Arizona is going to be terrible this year. I don't know who they even have on their team right now. Like they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And an interesting point on Cam Akers, when he got into the league, everybody's like, oh, wow, okay, this is the next guy. Like he's going to be a great running back for them. Tears his Achilles, comes back with superhuman speed. I don't know of anybody who's ever come back from an Achilles heel faster than Cam Akers has. He was kind of up and down last year, but it feels like he feels like the most stable person in that backfield, right? Like they tried the Kyron Williams thing last year, and it seems like they're still going back to Cam Akers, so they kind of like something there.
Yeah, look, I spoke to Cam Akers. I've been at camp a ton this offseason, and I was there for almost a whole week. And I spoke to Cam, and he says he's in as good of shape physically as he's been. He says he did everything he could to come back because he wanted to be part of that Super Bowl run, right? Like, I get it. But in retrospect, maybe he came back too fast and it kind of hurt him. Then he kind of fell in and out of favor with Sean McVay. There were some issues there about the usage and how he would be used, and he wanted to be used more clearly. And there was, I guess, some tension, right? We'll call it. But that no longer is an issue, according to him and according to his head coach.
Being around the team so much, is there any validity to the people that you talk to kind of on the inside or on the peripheral that think Sean McVay's on the way out to something bigger and better?
No, I get the sense from talking to him, and I've known Sean a really long time, right? And the thing with my relationship with Sean is that I probably feel like early on, because when he first got here, it was the second year I was here, and we're about, close enough in age. He's still way younger than me, but we're like, 6, 7, 8 years apart. So we have a lot to relate to, just personally. And I've always been the guy that always asked him, because we talked about this well before it was documented about him, dealing with mental health and things of that nature. I would always ask him, like, hey, man, what are you doing when you're not a coach? Like, what are you doing to kind of take your mind off of football? So we've always had those conversations. And, we had them recently, and he talked about how reinvigorated he was. And he basically, and I'm putting words in his mouth here, this is not what he said specifically, but he talked about like, hey, man, I got to deal with adversity better. Like I've had a very charmed life as a head coach in the National Football League, and that's not the norm, right? I had to understand that. And he talked about there were a lot of things going on that just kind of affected him personally. The losing certainly didn't help. But the one thing that team didn't do last year, Tony, was quit. If you look at it, even when they were bad, like they were in games till the end in a lot of these situations. They were in a game in Kansas City till like the last drive, basically, or the last couple minutes of that game. So that team never quit on him. They had that big win when Baker Mayfield showed up 5 minutes before and beat the Raiders, right? Like, so they never quit on Sean. So that's the one thing, is that he had a tough time adjusting to all the injuries that they dealt with, because everything that could have gone wrong from an injury perspective went wrong for them. Yeah. So we mentioned the offensive line. Obviously, that destroyed Matthew Stafford physically. He also never fully recovered from the elbow thing, which Jay Glazer, right, said on your show during last season. That was like breaking news at that point. Nobody knew that he was still dealing with an elbow issue. So I think this year they're in a much better place, a much better frame of mind, and that includes the head coach, who I feel like is bullish on this team's chances to be competitive.
He's Jorge Sedano. You can catch him ESPN LA, college football, NBA, everywhere. My brother, thank you so much. And we'll double dip with you talking AFC with the LA Chargers. 2 LA teams, bro. You guys got it made over there.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks.
All right, I love this guy's QB tiers list. He does it every year. They're going to be coming out soon. And I had to talk to him about his favorite team, the Carolina Panthers. And before, Tony, I get it. What are we doing talking about the Panthers? Interesting team, intriguing team. New head coach, new first pick overall, Bryce Young. Like, this team's got some juice. Let's figure out what they actually are before we give them any sort of pedestal. But Steven Ruiz of The Ringer, writer, podcaster for them, creates a great QB list that I look forward to every single season. Smart football mind. He's going to be talking about his team, the Panthers, that he hopes does well, but it always ends up bad. Yeah, sorry about that, Steven. Let's talk to Steven about it. All right, this is a guy I'm very excited to talk to, Steven Ruiz of The Ringer. He's a writer, he's a podcaster. You probably know him from your the quarterback rankings, which you do, which are awesome. Are you doing them this year, by the way?
We are. In like 2 weeks, you're going to get like an update for the 2023 season.
Excellent. I was told by our friend Charles McDonald that Steven is the guy to talk to for Carolina Panthers, even though he says there's nothing really to talk about or nothing to be excited about. I want to prove him wrong. I think the Carolina Panthers are exciting this year. Like, there's something about the team, the makeup, the quarterback, the coach, the defense, Brian Burns. Like, there's something there, dude.
No, there is. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in like the past 4 years or whatever it's been since Cam Newton left, there hasn't been much to be excited. But I do agree. This is a different feeling going into this year.
So I'm going to depress you with something, and then we'll get out of that, okay?
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to give you the last, 9 or 10 quarterbacks for the Carolina Panthers. Signed Teddy Bridgewater, traded him. Cut Cam Newton, then signed him. Traded for Baker, cut him after 7 games. Traded for Sam Darnold, let him walk in free agency. Signed Matt Barkley, cut him. Signed PJ Walker. Signed James Morgan, FIU shout out. Signed Jordan Ta'amu. Drafted Matt Corral. Traded away Kyle Allen. Cut Will Grier. Does that seem right?
That sounds right. That you just went over all the reasons I've been miserable over the past 5 years. You know what the sick thing is? I was really excited about PJ Walker. He had that one game against the Falcons last year, and I was like, all right, I'm sold. I'm tuning in every week. And then he was like the worst quarterback I've ever seen from that point on.
Dude, that 60-yard bomb to DJ Moore, I was like, yes, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for.
No. They missed the extra point. Yeah, they missed the extra point.
Why is Bryce Young going to be different? Or is he not going to be different?
Well, he's going to be different because he's like 5'6", 120 pounds. I mean, that's the one thing that's preventing me from like going wholesale excitement about this team is that he's very small, and we've never seen a quarterback like him get drafted that highly. And I think there's a reason for that. I feel like 10 years ago, everyone was pushing back against drafting the big quarterbacks with the strong arms. And they were like, just dumb scouts do stuff like that. It's about like your brain and your heart. But like over the past 5 years, that's kind of been the case, right? Like every good quarterback that comes in is just like an alien freak. And Bryce Young, for all of his talent, isn't really that. Like my comparison for him is like, imagine if Joe Burrow was like sized down by 50%. I think that's what he is, but I don't know what that looks like. Yeah. What does that look like?
Bite-sized Joe Burrow with not as strong of an arm.
No, it's like someone made like those Funko Pop things of Joe Burrow. That's Bryce
It's
Young.
like, here it is, guys. And you're like, all right, we're trading up to get him. That's it.
Right. That's the other thing is they traded up to get him.
What do you see from the collection of talent that they brought in? Obviously, Adam Thielen on one side, DJ Chark now, Terrence Marshall, who they had, Hayden Hurst, Miles Sanders, kind of guys that were okay in other places, but not going to, light the world on fire. What do you think about their skill positions?
I'm kind of excited about it. Like I like DJ Chark. I think that was like an underrated signing. The Miles Sanders signing I was fine with. And I like Hayden Hurst. He did a lot for that Bengals offense last year. But I feel like, you know what they're missing? A number one receiver, kind of like DJ Moore. Like I feel like he would tie it all together, but they don't have him. And I think that's what they're missing is that star receiver. Like they have a bunch of good number twos, a bunch of good number threes, but they don't have that one. And without that one, it's going to be hard, especially when you have a rookie quarterback who's going to be up and down no matter what.
What do you think about Frank Reich?
I like him. I mean, I went to Maryland. He went to Maryland, so I'm kind of biased, but I mean, he was dealt a raw hand. Some of that was his own doing, believing in Carson Wentz, but his quarterback retired like 2 weeks before the season, and they never really figured out a way to replace that guy. And I thought they did fairly well considering that.
I went back and looked. Reich has never had a rookie quarterback. So he had Andrew Luck in 18, Jacoby Brissett and Brian Hoyer in 19, Phillip Rivers 20, Wentz 21, Matt Ryan 22. So he's never had the ability to take a guy that's been super green, put him into the system, and like let him grow. Everybody's kind of had those bad habits or, you know, a preconceived notion of coming into a system and being like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing. Bryce Young's walking in like, buddy, I need to figure things out in the NFL. I'm way too small to not be cerebral and understand the playing field. Like, we got to make something happen. So that part excites me because, like, okay, if Frank Reich's the real deal and he's somebody that can put together a quarterback in the way that we thought he did with Andrew Luck, at least to a little bit, it's kind of exciting.
No, it is. And like his coaching hires have been exciting. They get Ejiro Evero from Denver. Like, that's not a guy, like a lot of head coaches that get fired and get a second chance, they kind of make the same mistakes and they like hire the same people. And he did the opposite of that. Like, the DC is from a different coaching tree. The OC is from a completely different coaching tree, which is really rare to see because he's an offensive coach. They usually hire, you know, their own guys, and he gets someone from the McVay system. So I think like there's a lot of good ideas in that building. Now it's just like putting them on the field and making it work, and then making it work for Bryce Young, which is the most important thing. Like, we can talk about the roster all we want. If he's not a good quarterback, it's not going to matter.
It's going to be a bad team no matter what.
Yeah.
Who's the guy looking across this team that you're like, okay, I'm taking somebody in fantasy. This is the guy that I kind of want to hitch my wagon to if it's the Carolina Panthers.
I would say Hayden Hurst. I think they're going to do like a lot of RPO stuff and get him involved, like get him running to the flat. I think he's going to get a lot of catches in the flat, and he did a lot of damage with those catches in Cincinnati. But I think now when you're not fighting Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for targets and even in Boyd,
right?
I think it's going to be easier for him to eat. He's going to get more opportunities, and I think he's a good player. He showed that last year.
I'm excited about this Panthers team. Like, when they started making those moves, I was like, okay, something's happening in Carolina. Bryce Young comes in. It's like, all right, wait a second. Like, this could be something. So, Steven Ruiz, I'm glad that you got to join us here on the NFL Road Trip. And hopefully the Panthers do well this season, man. I'm rooting for them. They're one of my teams that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep an eye on. Sunday Ticket, see what's going on. Carolina, you know, Buffalo or whatever the team is. Just keep an eye on them.
Give me 9-8. That's all I ask for. I don't ask for much. 9-8. That's all I want.
9-8? Do you think 9-8 is achievable, or are you putting that under?
Oh, it's on the table. I think a more realistic prediction is like 7 wins, but I think 9 wins is on the table, especially in this division. It's a bad division, bad quarterback division.
Oof.
There could be a chance that we look back on this year and we're like, Bryce Young was the best quarterback in that division.
That'd be crazy. That would be crazy, especially with Derek Carr. Like, I mean, he's there. Like, he was good at one point, I remember, at least.
That's a good way of explaining Derek Carr. He's there. He's there. He's always there.
Desmond Ridder. We got to figure all those out. Steven Ruiz, thank you for joining us, brother. Appreciate you. Go check out his work. The QB rankings coming soon, the next couple of weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks, baby. Let's go. Follow his stuff at the Steven Ruiz on Twitter. And I'm IG. I don't know what it is on IG. If you have IG,
I'm not on IG.
No IG. Okay.
I'm off the grid.
Off the grid, baby. I love it. Go check out his stuff, guys.